Hey everybody, and I want to first thank you for subscribing, and if you haven't already subscribed, just go ahead and click that red button underneath the video to get started, and then you'll be notified on all my new videos that come out. So you may have also heard me talk about upgrading to the Z6 II in one of my earlier videos this week. And you're probably wondering why. I've talked pretty highly of my Z5, and I still would highly recommend the Z5 if you're just kind of on the border of, well, should I make the switch from my DSLR to Nikon's mirrorless or not? It was really a great camera with a good feature set that allowed me to explore the Z mount, the lenses, the technology, the ergonomics, everything about it. It really just kind of was a great introduction camera to the Z system. But honestly, I shot a wedding a few weeks ago and I carried two cameras with me. One was the Z5 and the other one was my Nikon D810, and I put the 70-200 on my D810 and I had this 24-200 on the Z. Now, after looking at all my photos, there's about 600 photos that I took in total. The majority of them came from my D810. So I started asking myself, well, why is that? It could have been because I did have my 70-200 Tamron f2.8 on that lens, which is a stellar lens for portrait and weddings, but really what it came down to was speed. It just wasn't fast enough for me. It wasn't autofocusing fast, it wasn't focusing on the things that I wanted to be focused on, and when you're in a moment like that where 1 second and it's gone, you need to make sure that your camera can perform. And so I did find that the Z5 just wasn't quite up to that level that I wanted in a camera. So I started looking to the Z6 II and the Z7 II. I eventually settled on the Z6 II, one because of speed. The Z6 II can shoot natively 14 frames per second. It also has a dual BSI X-Speed 6 sensor, which is really good for low light. And so if you're shooting portraits and weddings, that's excellent, or even in cases of sunrise, sunset for landscapes, that also comes in pretty handy as well. And the speed boost that those dual processors give you is just, I didn't believe it after I got it. I put this in continuous high mode and just, wow, it was fast, let's just put it that way. The other thing that I really liked about the Z6 that I didn't know really until I got it was the back LCD panel is like twice as bright. It is so much easier to read than the Z5's panel. And the other thing that I also liked about this Z6 II was that it has face detection in the wide area focus modes as well, which the Z5 did not have that. So after getting the camera, I noticed a few things build-wise that honestly are better than the Z5 as well. First off is, and I don't have my Z5 anymore to double check this, but I swear this grip is slightly modified compared to the Z2. Not much, but my fingers fit so much more comfortably on this grip than they did in my Z5. It makes it a lot easier to reach these two function buttons right here in between the lens. The other thing that I noticed was this button here, which allows you to select your shooting mode, is also made out of metal and not plastic. It also requires you to press the center button to turn it to the mode you want and lift up, so you don't accidentally flip it. However, I did like that about the Z5. Of course, the dial wasn't on the left side of the camera, it was right here where the new LCD panel is. And so the Z5 put all your controls right here at one hand, which was nice. But I do tend when shooting is to cradle my lens, and then I have easy access to these two inside function buttons right here. So outside of that, the camera body is pretty much ergonomically the same as the Z5. You do have the extra display panel here, which at first also, you may go back to my my other Z5 video and you'll hear me talk about how I really didn't think I needed that. And I still really don't think I need that button, but it is pretty convenient to have, because right now I can look down and see what all my settings are without having to always go to the back LCD panel. And so that is nice. However, it is limited though. This basically will show you your shutter, your aperture, your battery, your flash, your ISO, how many pictures that are available to take based on all these settings, as well as your shooting mode such as single shot, low, high, super high, and timer, of course. And so it is nice to be able to see those at a glance sometimes, but honestly, I've become so accustomed lately to the new interface on the Z series LCD panels and using the information button, as well as reconfiguring some of the other buttons, which I'll go over in another video here soon. It's still pretty much the same camera as the Z5 body-wise, except for what is on the inside of it. So now there is one large change to the Z6 II as well as the Z7 II, or Z6 and Z7 models, which is memory cards. Now, one of the things you might remember me saying in my previous video about 3 things that swayed me to the Z5 over my D810 was the fact that Nikon finally brought back 2 SD card slots. Now, I still am a fan of 2 SD card slots. In fact, I think that half the time you pretty much only use 1 card slot, and the other card, depending on what you're doing in shooting, you're either going to set to backup or overflow. Rarely now, especially since the huge improvements over the SNAPBRIDGE software and integration with your phone, that you need to do RAW plus JPEG anymore to a separate card. And we're going to go over SNAPBRIDGE in another video soon because Nikon has really upped their game on that app, and I am pretty darn impressed. In fact, that's another thing that swayed me a little bit into the Z6 II, was the fact that firmware updates are now over the air. So once you connect your camera to the SNAPBRIDGE app via your phone, it will then tell you when there's a firmware update available. You then click download it, it downloads it into the app and then transfers it directly to your camera body, in which after that it starts running the download and then deletes the firmware update file from your camera automatically. So there's no more hassling, download a zip file or a DMG file for Mac. But to get back to the memory card, I am not a big fan of XQD or CFexpress. But originally, when they only offered XQD, I was really not a big fan because there are actually few places manufacturing these cards, which made them very expensive. And to be honest with you, these little cards still are pretty darn pricey. This card here, 128 megabytes, ran me $199 on Amazon, which at first I was like, yeah, man, that hurts. That is just super, super expensive. But then I did some research, and if you remember in 2010, SanDisk released the largest capacity and the fastest SD card, which was 64 gigabytes. And that retailed on the SanDisk site at the time, and this is 2010, so 11 years ago, for $349. And so when I look at this one, 128 versus the 64 way back when, is $199, and that one was $349. It's still a lot of money, but it's still a better deal than what we had back when SD was first being introduced and capacities were trying to be maxed out. This 128 gigabyte XQD/CFexpress card can get up to sizes of 2 terabytes. And so these cards definitely have a future, I think, in professional to flagship cameras. I know there's been tons of reviews on the Z6 II already, tons of places with pictures out there, and so I'm just going to show you a quick few that I've taken with this camera, and so you're probably wondering what I did with my Z5. Typically, as you can see behind me, I keep a lot of the camera bodies I shoot with, mostly because of the nostalgia of them. I could talk about each one of these camera bodies, the pictures I took, the experiences I had, what they taught me, how I moved up and progressed through this journey, which is kind of why I do that. But I had the Z5 for less than a year, and the Z5 and the Z6 II ergonomically are really, really similar, and so I decided to go ahead and just sell that camera body and kit my 24 to 50 millimeter with it back to Adorama. Otherwise, that's all I got for today. I appreciate you watching, and I thank you for clicking that red subscribe button below so that you'll be notified of new videos coming out weekly. Also, please check out my new playlist series called Thoughts While Drinking Coffee. Got some interesting topics going on there, as well as some conversation in the comments. Other than that, happy shooting, and we'll see you next time.